Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming from right here in our quaint little studio. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea, and this is the show where we talk about the things that we love, movies and movie news, TV and streaming, the things that bring us joy. And I'm joined in that joy in studio today by our technical producer, Jonathan Voico.
Good morning, everybody.
Writer, director, producer, Robert Meyer Burnett.
I need some joy today.
And most importantly, you guys are here. Thank you so much for being here and making our show a part of your day. Here's how today's show is going to go. We're going to start off by talking about a number of predetermined topics we have lined up for you guys. Then in the second part of the show is when we throw it over to you and we take your live comments and questions. If you have a thought, theory, opinion, or question you'd like us to discuss, as long as we deem it appropriate to be discussed on the show, go ahead and fire it into our super chats. You can do that in the live chat, and as long as it's appropriate for our show, we'll get around to answering it in the second part of the show. All right, guys. With that down, let's get things started with insanely bad news. My phone notification went off of a news alert, and I looked down to it, and I was in stunned disbelief to see that legendary filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife had died. They were murdered. And current reports today are saying by Rob Reiner's son, but we won't go into all that right now, be that as it may. And we'll just kind of focus here on, I can't believe we are now living in a world without Rob Reiner. A guy who brought such joy, such contributions to the art, such whimsy, and such powerful films that are some of his movies in the pantheon of like some of the all-time greats, is no longer with us. I mean, obviously it goes without saying, I have never lived in a world without Rob Reiner, both as an actor and as a director. Of course, I mean, it was a little bit before my time when he burst onto the scene with All in the Family, and he played Meathead in that, which he, was legendary for, all the way up to when he was doing his guest appearances in New Girl. I still love seeing him in New Girl. And of course, the great lineage. He came from his father, Carl Reiner, one of the all-time greats who we just lost not too long ago as well. But, here's the funny thing about Rob Reiner. When you think of him, you would be forgiven, understandably, if you just thought of mirth and whimsy. You thought of things like Spinal Tap, or you thought of things like The Princess Bride and things like that. But, he was a truly multi-dimensional director, because he also did one of the great horror films of all time, one of the truly great films of all time in Misery. He did one of the great dramas, military dramas ever made in A Few Good Men. You Can't Handle the Truth. Rob Reiner directed that. Stand By Me, An American President, which we may be talking about in a little bit. When Harry Met Sally, just Ghosts of Mississippi. He could direct. He wasn't like a lot of the great directors that he had one kind of movie. He could do just about all of it. But again, we think of him for his whimsy and his humor and the way he could make us laugh and the way he could make us feel. And now, granted, full disclosure, I didn't like the new Spinal Tap movie all that much. They took a swing and he missed on it. Whatever, that's fine. But I mean, this guy, there are not many directors, Rob, that have the pantheon filmography that he has. Not like one, not two, several all-time iconic films. And again, for me, the one that has its most multi-generational impact is The Princess Bride. I don't think it's hyperbole to say one of the most beloved films ever made. And that's the same guy who made Misery, which is crazy and just an incredibly sad day. Rob, you heard about this news. What was your first reaction to hearing it? And when you think of his filmography, what are the films that stand out to you the most?
Well, okay, first of all, I first encountered Rob Reiner because my dad's favorite show was All in the Family. And we would watch it, and he played Meathead, obviously. Yeah. And people don't remember how, you go back and you watch All in the Family clips today, people are shocked because that was one groundbreaking piece of television, and then he always wanted to go. I heard an NPR interview with him before the release of This Is Spinal Tap 2, and he talked about how his father supported him when he became a director, because he'd went and directed some short films and plays and things like that. And Carl Reiner was part of the 1,000-Year-Old Man duo with Mel Brooks, and the lineage there is incredible. But in terms of, like, I saw Spinal Tap in the theater, and I thought it was like the most hilarious thing in the world, and then he followed up with Stand By Me, which had pioneering uses of Introvision, the effects technology that was created. They first used it in Outland, and that was, to me, that was the Stephen King adaptation. That was the greatest Stephen King adaptation that I had seen up to that point.
Right.
And then Misery, he followed up with that, but then you had Princess Bride. I love When Harry Met Sally. It's literally one of my favorite movies. And of course, the casting, all the people that he knew, having like Bruno Kirby and Carrie Fisher as the secondary couple in that film. And then I saw a thing with Harry Connick Jr. today that he posted on Instagram. Harry Connick Jr. was very young, and he was just starting out as a crooner, and Rob Reiner tapped him to sing these classic songs. And as Harry Connick Jr. pointed out, I was a kid, and for him to take that chance on me. And then, of course, with Aaron Sorkin doing both A Few Good Men and doing An American President. Look, American President, half the cast of it later went on to be in The West Wing.
Yeah.
American President was written by Aaron Sorkin, and of course, Jed Bartlett was the chief of staff.
Then President Bartlett.
Then President Bartlett, and half the cast of A Few Good Men, of American President went on to Aaron Sorkin's West Wing, and then Medgar Evers, Ghosts of Mississippi. That film was about the murder of the civil rights activist Medgar Evers, and I saw an interview of Rob Reiner talking about where he was on the spot. I mean, after doing all the research, he was on the spot where Medgar Evers was assassinated, and he just started crying. He was a true Democrat, left-leaning guy, and my parents were kind of that way. And so I understood. I'm more of a classical liberal than he was, but I thought one of the things about Rob Reiner's great pantheon of work was his humanity. He was really all about people, all different kinds of people, and he believed in justice. And to see that this happened to him at the end of such a storied career. I mean, he truly was, when you think about American entertainment, for all you might say about it, is one of the great exports to the world. And if you look at his oeuvre, all of his movies were about the humanity of people. Whether they were quirky people, whether, he did try and look for what made us human. And I think his work really celebrated that. And that's what he was mostly, he loved people. And he loved people with all of our crazy foibles and our problems and our imperfections. He was never mean-spirited about anything in his films. And I think that that's something to be lauded and remembered.
It's funny. I was thinking about this morning. Filmmakers dream about one of their movies having a moment, a line in a film that just becomes completely embedded in pop culture, right? Rob Reiner may have the most out of any director, because if I say to you, but it goes to 11, you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
If I say, and I am the president of the United States,
right,
you know what I'm talking about. If you have in a girl's voice faking an orgasm in a restaurant, you know what I'm talking about.
What do you mean faking?
I'll have what she's having.
I'll have what she's having. If you say as you wish, you immediately know what we're talking about. Like and of course, maybe the most iconic one of all time. You can't handle the truth. Right. Like, he has a plethora of these all-time things. So Rob, let me ask you this. You go home later tonight, you got some free time, and the mood hits you that, you know what? I'm going to watch a Rob Reiner film tonight. What's the Rob Reiner film you're putting on?
You know what? It's got to be a double feature of When Harry Met Sally and An American President. Or maybe Stand By Me. Because, the thing about Stand By Me was that showed that Rob Reiner could really, doing a fake documentary when he played the character Martin DeBurgi for Spinal Tap was one thing. And you had all those Christopher Guest, you had Harry Shearer. so many good actors were in that movie. But that was a funny riffing kind of a thing. Where Stand By Me, he was working with a script, based on a Stephen King story, The Body, from different seasons, and it really showed that all of Rob Reinerisms that you ever needed to see had their roots in Stand By Me. And that film was so empathetic and it was so human. And it gets me every time. It gets me every time I see it. I mean, River Phoenix's performance. But then in American President, I just, I love Michael Douglas in that movie. And I love Annette Bening, and I love...
He worked with him in Wall Street, right?
And by the way, Rob Reiner was Leonardo DiCaprio's dad in The Wolf of Wall Street.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that was... And he... What is this American Express card bill? He was so good.
I mean, listen.
But $300,000? It was a lot of appetizers.
Used to fighting gangs for local charities.
So
how directing Andre the Giant is no small feat. I mean, it's again, there are going to be very few. Obviously, when we talk about the great pantheon of the great directors, we're going to be talking Spielberg, we're going to be talking Scorsese, we're going to be talking a lot of these guys. But man, when you actually sit back and take a look at the filmography of Rob Reiner, I'm not saying he's on the Mount Rushmore, but he's got to be in the elite conversation.
Yeah. I put him. He's more folksy. He's more him and Ron Howard.
Dude, I literally was about to say when you said that, and I was going to say Ron Howard.
Yeah, like if you want, there's Frank Capra, and he's like the goat of what he did. But in the modern era, I think the people that capture Americana best were Rob Reiner and Ron Howard. Like, you could have a film festival with the two of them because they're not Kubrickian and they're not Spielbergian, or Hitchcockian, but the level of humanity in all of their films. I mean, I would watch like Apollo 13 and American President.
And they're
together.
movies that if they're on, you could just sit down and I'm in.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Yeah.
But just a little side note, both of them say they were both we're talking about Rob Reiner and Ron Howard, both of them saying both heavily influenced by American Graffiti.
Mm-hmm. Right.
George Lucasfilm.
Yeah, and what's interesting, and both of them had great success on television as actors first. So they learned their craft in the business. So
it's again, it's just so difficult for me to fathom we're in a world without Rob Reiner now. And that's crazy. And I was asking you the question, the movie you put on. Listen, obviously, you're talking about Stand By Me, Spinal Tap, Harry Met Sally, A Few Good Men, American President. But I mean, it may sound like just the standard one, but for me, it's I'm going to watch Princess Bride tonight.
Right.
I'm going to sit down and watch Princess Bride tonight. Ready or not, you've been more than fair. It's
for me though. When Harry Met Sally is there something wrong with my face? I'll roll down the window. I could quote that movie chapter and verse.
Oh,
wasn't it in Spinal Tap where they're arguing about the album cover?
Yeah,
I think it's Suck My Love Bumper or something like that. And they're like, we can't run this album cover. They're like, you should have seen the one we said no to.
Yeah. Smell the glove. Smell the glove.
Guys, the question is for you. When you think of the career of the great Rob Reiner, whether it's Ghosts of Mississippi or Misery or This Is Spinal Tap or A Few Good Men or Harry Met Sally or, for me, Princess Bride or any of the other stuff he did either as a director or as an actor, what's going to come to your mind tonight when you think about it? If you had some time tonight to watch one Rob Reiner thing, what one thing is that going to be for you? Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. That down. Let's move on to this. I make the conscientious choice on my show as much as possible never to delve into the world of politics. Like anybody else, I definitely have some strong political viewpoints. But like Michael Jordan said about Nikes, Republicans buy sneakers too. And that's the great unifier. Movies, I consider movies to be the great unifier, right? You can be like even to me, somebody who's like extremely left or extremely right or whatever. But you know what? We can all love Lord of the Rings. I mean, that's just, it's one of the truly rare sports and movies, man. They can be like the great unifier. You can be extremely politically right or extremely politically left, but man, if you're a Dallas Cowboy fan, you're going to be sitting in those stands together, cheering together. Or if you're a movie fan, watching Star Wars together, or all that kind of stuff.
By the way, go Hawks.
So big win for them yesterday.
I know.
I generally try to make sure to keep politics and stuff like that out. But once in a while, something in the world of politics uninvitedly forces its way in to the movie world discussion. And in the light of the tragic passing of Rob Reiner, the President of the United States decided to jump on his homemade social media network, mock Rob Reiner's death, backhandedly blame Rob Reiner's death on the fact that he didn't like Donald Trump, and used it as yet, whenever I think of Donald Trump, all I think about is Maximus in Gladiator saying the days of, what's the exact line? The days of praising yourself, honoring yourself, the days of honoring yourself are coming to an end. But once again, using Rob Reiner's death as a way to lie and praise himself. As Deadline wrote today, Donald Trump blames Rob Reiner's Trump derangement syndrome in raging attack on film director even after his tragic death. I saw this morning. Now listen, I see things like this every once in a while. And listen, it's not a secret. I am not a fan of the human shit sack Donald Trump. I'm not a fan of him. But I come across things every once in a while, like from Truth Social, that I look at and I'm like, okay, that sounds like something Donald Trump would say, but I highly doubt he said that. And then I look into it and it was something somebody made up, right? So I try to keep an eye out for that stuff, like, because, he says enough stupid things that he doesn't need help, but a lot of people make fake stuff. And I saw this and I was 100% convinced this is one of those fake things until I looked into it. And even I, as ignorant as I believe Donald Trump is, I never would have guessed that he would write this publicly. But the reality is he is now so convinced of his absolute demonic hold over his followers that he now knows he can do and say anything he wants and it won't change anything. TDS is not Trump derangement syndrome. It's Trump deity syndrome. And I'm so tired of this demonic, heretical sack of garbage. And let's just get to what he said. It started good. A very sad thing happened last night. By the way, before I go any further, I was reading that very sad thing happened last night. If Donald Trump had come out and said, listen, I didn't like Rob Reiner. I think he had some stupid viewpoints.
Yeah.
But something like this should never happen. This is a tragedy, and our thoughts and prayers. Wouldn't have been the nicest thing to say, but okay. Yeah, I would have been totally okay with that. Come on, say, I didn't think Rob Reiner was a smart person. I didn't think he was a good person. But what happened to him was inexcusable, and our hearts go out to anybody suffering this kind of violence. I would have been totally okay with that. I really would have. Again, not the nicest thing, but I would have been okay with that. This is what the President of the United States wrote, not some radical right-wing nobody in Missouri. This is the President of the United States wrote, a very sad thing happened last night in Hollywood. Rob Reiner, a tortured and struggling, but once very talented movie director and comedy star, has passed away together with his wife, Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy by his raging obsession, and then he refers to himself in the third person, of President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpasses all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us perhaps like never before. Look, I'm not going to be disingenuous. I don't like this guy. It's not a secret. I don't, but whatever. It is what it is. But there are people, there's not a lot of people I don't like, but there are people that I don't like that I think there's a lot of stuff that's beneath them. Even Donald Trump, I thought this was beneath him. It certainly is obvious. Well, everything this lying sack of garbage does is beneath the presidency of the United States. But I mean, I thought this was even beneath him. And if you are somebody who supports Donald Trump, by the way, I'm not talking about if you're somebody who's conservative in your political viewpoints.
This is not a conservative statement.
No, this was not this was not politics. And by the way, some people might be surprised that there are certain conservative philosophies in politics that I actually adhere to myself. This is not about whether you're a conservative. It's not even about whether or not you're a Republican. By the way, a lot of Republican government officials have been coming out and condemning what Donald Trump has said. Good for them. But if you're somebody who's like a Trump deity syndrome sufferer, listen, you want to ignore and be okay with the fact that he is a literal convicted felon. I'm not making up words to like cast an insult. I mean, he is a convicted felon by a jury of Americans selected by Trump's own attorneys. He's a convicted felon. And you want to look the other way on that? Okay. A civil court jury found that he did sexually assault women. You want to look the other way on that? Okay. Okay. He gets on television in a nationally televised debate and says Haitian immigrants are stealing and eating their neighbors' pets. You want to look the other way on that? Okay. You want to look the other way, going back a ways, that he literally is caught on audio tape confessing that he just straight up sexually assaults women. He'll just grab them because he's rich. It's okay. You wanted to look the other way on that? Okay. You wanted to look the other way on, I mean, I could sit here and do the laundry list forever. This isn't innuendo. This is like literal factual stuff. You want to look the way on all that? Okay. Well, now we're movie fans. And we just had this guy, this beloved filmmaker, made some of the greatest films of all time. And whether he was one of the greatest or whether he was a first-time director, it doesn't matter. For the president of the United States to put out a statement like this, it doesn't sadden me as much, Rob, as it saddens me that the state of the United States, I'm a Canadian, but I grew up as a Canadian with great love, as most Canadians have always had before Donald Trump. Whether it was a Ronald Reagan White House or a George Bush White House or a Barack Obama White House or a George W. Bush White House, great love and affection for our beloved neighbors to the south. It saddens me what Donald Trump said, sure, but what saddens me even more is that there are Trump divinity syndrome sufferers who are going to look at this and just, again, go, that's just Donnie being Donnie and turning the other way.
He's just a West Coast Hollywood elite libtard.
Yeah.
Fuck him.
Look, I've said this before, and every once in a while I try, because there are politics and then there's humanity. Politics are, how should we divvy the budget between roads and schools this year? Politics are, how late should the hours of the public park be open tonight? Politics are, how are we going to appoint a new superintendent for this school board? That's politics. This is straight up human garbage. This isn't politics. This is human garbage on display from the person who sits in the most prominent seat of the world. And every couple of years I do something like this, but I got to say it again. If you are somebody who endorses this, unsubscribe from my channel. Please. I don't need you here. I don't. I'm good. I'm good for the rest of my life. I don't care if I have 50 viewers tomorrow. I really don't. I don't want you. I would prefer you dream that I not exist. Because quite frankly, you don't exist to me. After this, if you still want to stand behind this guy and this whatever, and that this is fine, this is okay, and then come out with a bunch of whataboutisms, because that is the hallmark of the week. Well, what about that guy in New York City from his mom's basement who said he was glad Charlie Kirk got assassinated? Well, that guy was an asshole. But he was also a loser living in his mom's basement. This is the fucking president of the United fucking States. So yeah, do me a favor. Hey, if you're a Republican who's here, love it. If you're a conservative who's here, love it. But if you're somebody who's wearing a red MAGA hat, don't come into my house. I'm sorry. You and I have nothing to discuss together. You and I have no shared humanity. And I just think it's best that you not come to my channel anymore. I'll be okay. Don't you worry. I'll be fine. I'm okay. You don't exist to me and I shouldn't exist to you anymore, because Rob, at just some point you got to go, there is something terminally wrong with you if you just keep looking the other way on this kind of behavior, this convicted felon. But anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Rob, I got to ask, you and I haven't talked about this yet.
No.
I've got to assume that there must have been a part of your mind too when you read this, thought this can't be real. This can't be real. Like, he wouldn't write this.
Well, I just have to say that, my weekend began with somebody in my town, a Jewish family in my town, having 20 rounds of something shot into their house because they were Jewish. So when I woke up, that was after everything that happened this morning, Brown University, Australia, and then I woke up to this. And my whole thing is, John, that I've always believed, I was taught by my father, that one of the great things about America is that we can all disagree, but we have a country where we can share those disagreements with one another, whether it's in a public forum, we can argue, and that the Republicans and that the Democrats can argue with one another and find consensus. That's what politics is too. It's about compromise and consensus from different points of view. I came from a rather conservative family, I would say. My father I never heard him say a bad word about anybody. But there's something that my dad would talk about, which was grace. My father talked about how it was important. Sometimes you had to bite your tongue and display grace. When things happened, even to people that you despised, there were moments where you could stop and put aside any differences you might have with someone and say, look, first and foremost, we are all Americans, all of us. We might have different points of view. We might have vehement different points of view from one another. But there are moments where we all, as Americans, can agree on certain things. Rob Reiner was in the public sphere for 54 years, and he lived the life that he preached. The things that he believed in, he backed up with his work. You can never say that Rob Reiner was hypocritical. You can never say that Rob Reiner was doing anything less than trying to be the best person he could be in the profession that he chose. And he transitioned from being an actor in one of the most groundbreaking TV shows ever made that I wish people would watch more of, because they'd learn a lot about what it means to be an American watching All in the Family. Because it was about Rob Reiner's character was in diametric opposition to Archie Bunker's character, a racist, horrible guy. And he was the ultimate raging liberal. And the war that went on in that household was the war that went on in America, which is why that show was so groundbreaking at the time. It taught how to have consensus. It's something we as Americans have forgotten. When I saw this, I saw no grace. I saw nothing that my father used to teach me about. And when Rob Reiner didn't just die. He lost his life in a very brutal fashion. And we lost somebody who had been exemplifying the best of America for 54 years. And whether you liked him or not, whether you believed in his policies or not, his work stands for itself. The work he leaves behind, whether it was in All in the Family or any of the movies he made, yes, even North, he left us a legacy of his beliefs and his humanity and his empathy, and he deserved better from the man that leads all of us. He deserved grace, and he received none today, nor did his wife, who I believe he met on the set of When Harry Met Sally. And that is what is very disappointing, because if the leader of our country can't show grace for all Americans, what does that say about where we're at as a country? And that's what made me sad.
Yeah. And again, the audacity to then overtly blame the fact that you don't like Trump. This is what happens when you don't like Trump.
You die.
You die, and it's your fault. It's your fault. And gosh, ain't I great? By the way, everybody, in case I haven't told you in the last 5 minutes, I'm the best.
And by the way, you
great.
know what? If he had mentioned the name of one TV show or one movie that Rob Reiner was involved with, I might have felt he's never seen a Rob Reiner film, and I bet he's never watched All in the Family. And that was something that not even somebody could say, hey, feed him a title of a movie. He's never seen anything Rob Reiner's done.
Anyway, guys, again, this is one of those situations where the world of politics kind of uninvitedly, unwelcomely forced its way into our world of movie talk and stuff like that. And sorry, not sorry, that had to be said. So anyway, guys, with that down, let's move on to something more pleasant, shall we?
I don't know if
Let's
you could call
talk
it.
about a murdering clown.
I don't know if we could call that pleasant, but
Hey, wait a minute. Isn't that Donald Trump? Anyway, let's go on and talk about a supernatural murdering clown. Last night, the finale of Welcome to Derry, Welcome to Derry, came out. And I got to tell you, man, I fully admit, I like it when this happens. There are many, many shows that I get excited about. But every once in a while, there's a show that comes out that I think, I don't think this is a good idea to do this as a show. I don't think it's going to work. Doing an It television series, I thought was a bad idea. And boy, am I ever glad to stand corrected today. This show has been wonderful. First of all, episode 1 comes out of the gates with Welcome to Derry is on. Oh, I wonder what kind of show this is going to be. Let's start episode 1. Oh my God. Like, I talked to my wife the other day. I was talking to Ann. And when I was out, she decided to sit down and start watching Welcome to Derry. And she's like, what the hell is this? So it starts off like totally backcrap crazy. And then it actually delves into great mythology. And actually gets into the background of Pennywise. And, sometimes with big supernatural stuff, whether it's the Force or others, certain things don't need or shouldn't be explained. And I was kind of thinking that with Pennywise. But as they went into the show, everything they were doing with Pennywise was like, this is really freaking interesting about Pennywise. There's really 2 different Pennywise origins. There's the origin of the entity, and then there's the origin of the clown. And both of them were fascinating. You introduce that again. It can't be it without a group of kids. So the kids were great. The adult characters were wonderful. The whole idea about the military looking into this creature or whatever, I thought was a fascinating approach. The sometimes subtle and sometimes not so subtle tie-ins to the larger world of Stephen King was fascinating. And, after episode 7, which a lot of people think is like one of the best episodes of television this year, and I thought it was really great. Episode 7 was incredible. Going into episode 8, the finale is like, can they nail the landing? Understanding that, well, it continues, so they're not going to kill Pennywise because
Right.
we know but how are they going to bring this as any kind of a satisfying ending? And they did it. They did it. I was thrilled. Again, I'm not going to go into any spoilers or anything like that, but I first thought that when they were doing the show, I thought we were going to get little glimpses of Pennywise here and there, but Pennywise, as we get later in the series, becomes a very front and center character. And Skarsgård's performance as Pennywise, absolutely fantastic. Like, I always liked him in the movies, but this was another level. This was another, show me the bow. Anybody who watched the show, that wasn't from last night's episode, but show me the bow. I mean, oh my God, he's so good. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not putting this show on the level of Shogun. I'm not putting the show on the level of Andor per se.
Right.
But I got to admit, I didn't have a lot of expectations going into this. But chef's kiss, and listen, bravo Andy Muschietti. For pulling this thing off and doing it so well. I think I'm going to do a full rewatch of the series, actually. Like soon, like really soon. I'm going to sit down and do another full rewatch of it. And I just think, again, they nailed the landing. It was an excellent show. Great horror, great mythology, great story, great characters. It checked off all the boxes, Rob. I absolutely had a great time with this series. And again, the finale was great. The visual effects are great. Pennywise is amazing. Anyway, Rob, you haven't watched the finale yet. You have not seen episode 8 yet.
No, I went to this Christmas concert last night, and then I was at the folks' house.
Well, I was out last night too, but I got up early to watch the show. But what's your kind of impressions been of the series up to this point?
Well, I gotta say, dude, I read it, the hardcover, when it first came out in the summer of 1986. I read it at the beach, a place called Luther Burbank, because my girlfriend had gone to Alaska for the summer and I was depressed. So I would just read the book and go to work. I loved it. I mean, it was such an expansive novel, and we've had the miniseries, we had Muschietti's It Part 1 and It Part 2.
And by the way, I think the show exceeded the movies.
Well, I gotta say, I think this show is tremendous. At first, I gotta tell you, I watched the first episode. I thought it was good. Actually, the first 2 episodes I thought were really good. But I'm like, where is this all gonna go? Like, it seemed needless. Like, does this really? But like you, when they started to get into the origins of Pennywise and these characters and how Jack Halloran, and all the characters from other
Dick
Stephen
Halloran.
King stuff. Did I say Jack Halloran?
Yeah.
Jack Halloran is the character who played Non in Superman 2. Dick Halloran. Yes. And when you saw the tie-ins and all that, I just loved it. And I can't wait to watch. I'll watch the finale when I get home today. But this has been a tremendous show that, like you, does this need to get made? Because so many times there's actually Stephen King, the Dead Zone TV series. Do you ever watch any of that with Anthony Michael Hall?
No, I never did.
There's a it's pretty good. And that show, I was totally like, why are they doing that? And I thought that show was a lot better than it had any right to be. And this is probably, of all the Stephen King TV shows, I think this has got to be the best. I mean, it's really good. And like you, I was surprised by it. I was surprised. I wasn't sold after that first episode. I loved how it ended, and I was like, oh, this is really mean-spirited. And what is this flying thing? Well, what is this? Come on. It's a little far. But I've loved this show. The first 7 episodes were all wildly entertaining, especially once I sat down and had the mindset, like, I'm like, oh, this show's going to go for it. Like, it might do some wacky things that I might be like, wait a minute. It's going for it. And it went for it all the time. It didn't just, not everything ended like episode 1, but everything was good. Like, I watched it. Every episode had an element of satisfaction to it that was unusual, how good it really was. And I would say, I agree. It's not as good as Andor because it's not supposed to be, but for what it is, it delivered. It delivered. I mean, they must have had so much fun making this show.
And again, another big win for HBO Max, man.
Totally.
By the way, it's just total side note, but you brought up Non.
Right.
I've always thought, because that great scene in Superman 2 when Non is trying to use his heat vision, right, and he's like, just little like spark. I always thought it's been a massively missed opportunity for any erectile dysfunction medication commercials to not use that clip and go, do you feel like this sometimes? Not quite being able to get there.
Somebody's going to cut that together and make it. Yeah, they're.
It's a massive missed opportunity that they don't use that clip in their commercials. Anyway, guys, question is for
Never
you.
had that problem.
Have you been watching it? Welcome to Derry. I gotta admit, I didn't have a lot of hope in it, but it's pretty damn good. And I thought the finale nailed the ending. Whatever you guys thought about it, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, being a brand new week, I thought we would start things off with some hot takes from you guys, and that's why we're going to do a little round of overreaction. The way overreaction works is we just ask you guys, as we did on the YouTube channel a little bit earlier today, we ask you guys to send in some hot takes you have, and then Rob and I will adjudicate whether we think your hot take is an overreaction or not.
Oh boy.
Jonathan's got a bunch of them gathered up that you guys sent in. So, Jonathan, what do we got up first?
All right, Rob, is this an overreaction? When we hear from SOS Studios, next year we'll have up to $5 billion films. Five of them.
No. I don't think that's an overreaction at all. This year we've only had 2. Next year having 5. I mean, Avengers Endgame is opening. We have The Odyssey is opening. Project Hail Mary, which I think people don't think it's going to be as big as I think it's going to be. That's at least 3. Toy Story, we've got coming out, Toy Story 5, right? And there's got to be one more. So I don't think it's an overreaction.
So
I think it's a possibility.
Five. Okay, look, 5's a big number considering this year is probably going to end with 3. Is probably like once Avatar was clearly going to be $1 billion film, so that'll be 3 for the year. But we're talking 5 of these have to hit the $1 billion mark. Odyssey, Jumanji 3. And remember, Jumanji is a franchise that has flirted with the $1 billion mark a couple of times. Toy Story 5, the new Super Mario Brothers movie, because the last one made 1.3 billion. Moana, the live action, we just saw what it has done. Project Hail Mary, Dune Part 3, Spider-Man Brand New Day, Avengers Doomsday, and Star Wars Mandalorian and Grogu. Now, I don't think Star Wars Mandalorian and Grogu is going to do it. But so you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 potential films. You need 5 of them to crack the $1 billion mark. I don't think it's going to be easy, but I don't think it's an overreaction.
No, I don't either.
I think because then we're talking about which ones would I say odds are it'll make $1 billion. Avengers Doomsday, I think you can mark that one down. I think Odyssey will make $1 billion. So there's Odyssey. Spider-Man Brand New Day, I think will make $1 billion. And then what we got? We got Project Hail Mary. That's a question mark. I don't know if I can say that will probably make $1 billion. It'll probably be awesome, but I'm not sure everybody say it's probably going to make $1 billion. Toy Story 5, Super Mario Brothers. I don't think it's an overreaction. I will say it is not an overreaction to say we're going to get 5 next year. Not a guarantee, but I don't think an overreaction. All right, what's next?
Okay, John, is this an overreaction? When we hear from Justin, F1 will be nominated for Best Picture.
You know, here's the thing. We live in an era now, at least for the last number of years, where there are 10 nominees for Best Picture. But I still think calling F1 a Best Picture nominee is probably an overreaction. I love F1. I thought it was so much fun. I enjoyed it immensely. But does it get a nomination for Best Picture, even in a world where we have 10? I don't know, man. I think that might be pushing. Look, I'm not going to fall out of my chair in shock if it grabs that 9th or 10th spot. But I don't think it's likely, so I'm going to say it's an overreaction. Rob, what about you?
I'm going to agree with you. Look, I think F1 was one of the most enjoyable experiences I had in the movie theaters this year. Loved it. Bought the disc. Loved the 4K. The sound on it's amazing. Fantastic. Best Picture, though? Don't think so. It could pick up, like you just said, spots 9 or 10, maybe. But I think that actually, if you look at it, this was a pretty strong year for cinema itself. I just don't think that F1, and F1, by the way, if you made the argument, Rob, it was beautifully made on every level. Yes, it was. It was Jerry Bruckheimer bringing in his producerial sheen to the best of his ability, and everybody in it delivered.
Could have lost those announcers, though. I hated those announcers.
But I mean, but the film did what it was supposed to do. But it's just the subject matter isn't weighty enough for me to think it's going to win Best Picture. I think you also have to have. It's too much of a trifling entertainment as opposed, but still, it was a really good one.
Yeah.
I loved it.
All right, what's next?
Sorry, I was still fuming over those announcers. Rob, is this an overreaction when we hear from Fatine, RDJ's return to Marvel is going to cheapen his death in Endgame?
No, I don't think it's going to cheapen his death in Endgame. I think it's going to make. Look, I did say there was going to be 3 Avengers movies, and with the re-release of Endgame, I was right.
Well, now there might be 4.
Yeah, I know, technicality. But I don't think it's going to cheapen his death in Endgame because I don't think they would want to do that. I think they know, look, if it is to be believed, I think that Infinity War, Endgame, and Doomsday are probably going to work together as a trilogy. Unofficial trilogy, but a trilogy. And I think part of that is honoring what has come before. And if what I think is happening there, I think they're doing that quite well.
Yeah, I'm going to call this an overreaction. And the reason I'm going to call it an overreaction is for historical sake and practicality sake. Practicality sake, this isn't Tony Stark coming back to life, right? This is a different character with a different name. Yes, looks similar, and there's probably going to be reasons why they look identical. But from a practicality sake, but also from a historical point, I remember before Deadpool and Wolverine came out, there were people concerned, understandably, that, man, that ending of Logan was so perfect. Is bringing Hugh Jackman back as Logan now going to cheapen that death that we had at the end of Logan? And it didn't at all. It was great, and it didn't cheapen. And here's the other thing I go with this too. You know, regardless of what happens later, whatever experience you have with a movie is still the experience with that movie. Like the prequels may have been garbage to me in Star Wars, but that didn't at all take one iota of enjoyment and love and the experience I have with the original trilogy. They are what they are. I'll even go to something more obscure. Remember Analyze This and Analyze That?
Yeah.
Billy Crystal, Robert De Niro. Analyze This. Amazing, great comedy, man. Great little comedy. It was never super popular, but I thought it was a wonderful comedy.
It was.
So, and I think Lisa Kudrow from Friends was in that too. And then they put out the sequel, Analyze That. One of the worst comedies I've ever seen. It was just terrible. But did that at all take away my enjoyment from able to just going back and watching Analyze This? None at all. So, whatever the experience was that you had with the death of Tony Stark in Endgame, that's immutable. That's forever. That's never going to change. Regardless of what does or doesn't happen in future movies or reboots or bringing characters back, whatever, it doesn't affect it at all. And I think even just the recent example of Hugh Jackman coming back as Wolverine is proof of that. So I'm going to say that this is an overreaction. All right. What's next?
All right, John, is this an overreaction when we hear from The Powder Chase? The theatrical release for the finale of Stranger Things Season 5 will clear $250 million. Whoa.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, would put it right on course to being the highest grossing Netflix film.
But it's all in concessions.
Yeah, that's right. It's all in concessions. So, I mean, and that's an important point to understand. Technically speaking, the Stranger Things release is not making any box office. I think each theater chain is handling it differently. But for example, with AMC theaters, the ticket is free. But in order to reserve a seat, you buy X amount of concession stand vouchers first. So like $20 in concessions vouchers. So your ticket to get in is free, and you've just spent what you were probably going to spend on the concessions anyway. So technically speaking, it can't. But let's, for argument's sake, say that they were selling tickets to these screenings as normal. I would still say it's an overreaction. Why? When is it coming out?
New Year's December 3rd. Yeah.
I just think there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of other plans. And by the way, some of those plans might be just staying home watching Stranger Things finale. So I think it's going to do very well. I think a lot of people are going to go to it, but I think it's an overreaction to think it would equate to that much money. Rob, what do you think?
I think it's a total overreaction. Let's say it was, just assuming it was, it's not going to be in theaters long enough to make that kind of money, no matter how many tickets it sells. Which it's not doing. It can't sell tickets. I just don't think that there's no way there's just not enough time to make that, because it's only one day. It's not like all weekend long, is it?
I don't think so.
Yeah, so it's only one day, and I don't even.
2 days.
It is 2 days.
Yeah.
Okay, so but even 2 days, that's a hell of a lot of tickets to sell. I just think we've never seen something like that except maybe once or twice, and this is not going to be one of those things.
All right. What's next?
Rob, is this an overreaction when we hear from the Brandon Salad? James Gunn's Superman trailer held more stakes for the studio compared to Doomsday trailer for Disney.
That's a
great question.
That's a
really good question.
Yeah.
You know, I would say it is a bit of an overreaction only because the amount of money they spent on Doomsday. So with Superman, they just had to get their foot in the door and prove that there's a viability there. Whereas Doomsday has shareholder expectations, studio expectations. The studio's like, you better put your franchise back on a paying basis. And they've gone all in. This is Casino Royale in Montenegro. It's Le Chiffre and Bond, and they're going all in on this. And I think that this is either make or break for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for something that was once hugely profitable, that has been questionable over the last half decade, whereas Superman just had to open a door. And I think it did open a door, and I think it opened the door. It did what it was supposed to do. Did it make $1 billion? No. I thought it had the potential to do so. It didn't.
I never thought it had potential.
Yeah,
to
I
do
know.
so.
But it opened a door in a fine way, and it brought the DC characters back to viability on the big screen. So it did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, I'm going to call it an overreaction. And the reason I'm going to call it an overreaction is not because that Superman trailer, which was so great with that John Williams score, that it wasn't very important. It was because, as Rob just alluded to, it was trying to start a new DC thing to start the recovery and the healing from the trauma and the failure that was the DCEU. But the thing with Marvel is, it's not what it could potentially be. It's what it is. And what Marvel is a $24 billion film franchise that right now is on the precipice of success or failure. It is a $24 billion film franchise that, for the first time in its existence in the last couple of years, is being hit and miss and a little shaky, and some people starting to question it and all that kind of stuff. And now you're coming out with this Doomsday thing. And listen, fair or not, it's kind of being seen as the make or break moment for Marvel.
It's a Hail Mary pass.
It's a Hail Mary. And look, absolutely, the importance of that Superman launch and starting with a strong trailer can't be overstated. You're absolutely right about that. But again, it's just it's a game of scale, because with Superman and DC, it's what it could be. We know what's at stake is a $24 billion film franchise with Marvel. And that's why I think this particular statement is an overreaction. All right, what's next?
Okay, last one up here. John, is this an overreaction when we hear from Tony K? The Odyssey will overtake The Dark Knight at the box office, or Dark Knight Rises at the box office.
Oh, The Dark Knight Rises.
Yes.
Well, The Dark Knight Rises made a lot of money too. Let me pull up the
I think
exact.
it made more.
Well, that was because of how big The Dark Knight was. Well, it made 1.08 billion. I can't remember how much The Dark Knight did, but 1.08 billion.
Dark Knight was 1.008.
Okay, so it did make more.
Yeah.
So here's the question. What we're really asking is, can the Odyssey make 1.08 billion? And I've gone on record. I think this is a very reachable number for the Odyssey. Listen, my whole kind of comparison to this has been, if Christopher Nolan can do a period piece biopic about a nerd in Oppenheimer, and that came razor close to making $1 billion. If he can do that, what's going to happen when he has equally, if not a more impressive cast doing a sword and sorcery, fantasy film like The Odyssey. Now, do I think The Odyssey is going to be a $2 billion film? No, I do not. Do I think it's going to make $1.6 billion? No, I do not. But again, if Oppenheimer can basically hit the $1 billion mark,
I see Oppenheimer.
all this has to do is barely crawl over that mark, 1.08. So I don't think it's an overreaction to say that it will exceed The Dark Knight Rises. Rob, what do you think?
I don't think it's an overreaction for the reasons you stated. And I also think what's really interesting is today, in terms of especially people that love movies, Christopher Nolan is not just a guy, he's a brand.
It's true.
And if you think
well
about
put.
and so is A24. And I think that what's really interesting about say younger audiences, Gen Z audiences, they look at Nolan and I would dare say that Interstellar might be, and just by what I see on social media, might be one of the most beloved movies in terms of speaking to a generation because of the emotional content of it, fathers and daughters, and what happens at the end of that film. It's kind of like, in a way, it's not like E.T. It's different than E.T., but it speaks, and because of that, Nolan's films in general, going all the way back to Memento, I'd say following, because that's interesting too, but Christopher Nolan has a really interesting filmography and style, and for whatever reason, people are gonna go see Odyssey because they know Nolan, the way Spielberg used to, delivers a certain, not as treacly or emotional as Spielberg, but a certain intellectual satisfaction in his movies, more so than like you feel, you walk out of a Christopher Nolan movie, even like The Prestige, and you feel a little smarter than when you went in, and I think that's admirable. And I don't think a lot of filmmakers necessarily have that. And that's true of even Memento. You walk out of that going, kind of a mind bender. I think I'm smarter for it.
Did you ever watch this here where he's explaining Memento?
Yeah.
I followed him and then I'm like, I'm still a little confused.
Yeah. Look, I saw Inception 8 times in the theater. And I'm still not convinced about the end of that movie. And I don't know if Christopher Nolan is, but it doesn't matter. And look, the guy made Dunkirk. He turned Dunkirk into an art film about a World War II incident that's not even about America. And I love it. And I'll tell you, I think that I'm not going to bet against The Odyssey. I do think the subject matter is not something people are necessarily going to gravitate towards, but you never know.
By the way, what's the name of the movie again? I know everybody in it. Steve Carell, Christian Bale, Ryan Gosling, about the housing market crash.
The Big Short.
The Big Short.
One of my favorite films of the 21st century.
You're talking about
The
how
Big Short is so
watching
good.
movies that you walk out feeling like you're a little bit smarter. I just instantly thought of The Big Short.
Oh man,
when you walk out of that
movie and The Social Network are the movies I've watched the most in the 21st century.
Huh.
Be that as it, and probably Inception too.
All right, guys, that will wrap up today's round of overreaction. Thank you so much to everybody who sent in their hot takes. Keep your guys' eyes open on the channel when we put out calls for you guys to send in more. And we'll play this again later in the week. All right, guys. With that all down, let's move on to this, shall we? Well, we were just talking a little bit about DC and the new start that they've had. And one of the movies they've got coming now, I believe it's the movie they're going to have in theaters after Supergirl, is Superman Man of Tomorrow, where we all know, it's a fact, Brainiac is going to be the villain. I mean, after all, it was confirmed by The Hollywood Reporter, not Gus's gas station movie reviews.fart, but The Hollywood Reporter confirmed that Brainiac is going to be the villain in it. And as we talked a little bit last week about, there are some questionable reports, but some nonetheless, about who they are looking at to play them, not the least of which was Matt Smith to play Brainiac. And there were a couple of other names thrown in there as well. Well, James Gunn just took a big dump on those things because somebody else asked, there was a new rumor that Dave Bautista, you guys probably saw this over the weekend, that Dave Bautista was being rumored that he was being looked at and he might end up being Brainiac. Well, James Gunn, as James Gunn does, decided to jump on social media and dump a lot of cold water on all that, setting the record straight. This comes to us from Total Film, who wrote the following. Replying to a report that suggested Guardians of the Galaxy actor Dave Bautista was being lined up to play Brainiac, Gunn wrote on Threads, "Let's forget a moment that I never said Brainiac was in the movie. I freaking love Dave Bautista, and I have many ideas for who he could play in the DCU, but he and I have never discussed a role in Man of Tomorrow, nor have we discussed it amongst ourselves at DC. In addition, this is where it goes a little bit further. Truly, none of the names from the 6 or 7 I've seen rumor for a role have auditioned or been discussed at all. Gunn later confirmed to a fan in the affirmative when he was asked if we will get a villain that isn't Luther or Zod in Man of Tomorrow, which is dated, of course, for July 9th, 2027. Okay, so there's 3 kind of angles on this one. First, guys, says James Gunn, Dave Bautista is not going to be Brainiac, which I had not heard that one prior to this weekend. And hey, listen, if James Gunn gave me a call and said, what would you think of Dave Bautista as Brainiac? I would say, that could be cool. Not the one I would have come up with, nor my first choice, but that could be pretty cool. But he's pouring that out. It's not going to be Dave Bautista. We are going to have him in the DCU, he says, but he ain't going to be Brainiac. So that's the one point. The second point he addresses, hey guys, can I just bring to attention, I have never once said Brainiac was going to be in this movie. Which, what he says is true. He did put out a picture of a Man of Tomorrow script with a dude's brain, kind of hinting at it. And it has been reported by significant major trades, not these little, farty sites like the John Campea Show or whatever, like real trades, the big ones. But he's not wrong when he says, guys, I've never said Brainiac's in this movie to start with. And then the third item he crosses. Oh, all those names you saw that were officially our short list reports coming out, Matt Smith and a bunch of other guys. We have never even talked about those people. He said, all of the names that I've seen floating around, we have never once talked about those people. Again, he's not saying it's impossible any of those names couldn't ever end up being Brainiac. He's not necessarily Brainiac. By the way, James Gunn did not say Brainiac is not in the movie. He's just pointing out a fact that he said, I never said he was. But it sounds like all those names from those reports that we talked about here on the show, including Matt Smith and several of the other guys, apparently those are all just myths. He said, nope, not only have we never talked to them about it, they have never auditioned. Even in our own offices, we've never talked about these people. So that's another thing. So James Gunn in one big swoop just knocked off 3 pretty big points here, Rob. Which of those 3 big points stands out to you the most? And what do you think about all of them in general?
Well, I mean, look, in this day and age, I think no one knows how to play the internet better than James Gunn does. And I think when he gets on these things, whatever is true or whatever is not true, by him going on, he can obfuscate both at the same time. And I think he's good at it. And I think he might be correct. I think that he himself, look, is Brainiac going to be in this movie? I think, judging by the cover of that script, that was a good assertion to make.
I believe he is going to be.
I think he's going to be, because, by the way, it's also a character that we haven't seen on the big screen before. Television.
Which checks that box. And it's got to be somebody that would literally require Lex Luthor and Superman to team up with. So
yes.
It's not just a standard Superman villain.
No, and that, I believe Brainiac can provide both a terrestrial and an extraterrestrial threat to that both characters are, like Luthor's abilities with technology might be needed to save the Earth, and Superman's strength needs to save the Earth from, say, space or whatever. So I totally believe that. But I also believe that they haven't started casting the movie too. So I believe it when he says that we haven't even talked about these people yet because we're not there. We're figuring everything else out. Do I think, though, that he doesn't have in his mind who he wants to try and get to be Brainiac? Of course he does. Of course he does. He wrote the script. I mean, if you asked him who he pictured as Brainiac.
He's never said he never had anybody in mind.
Well, right. That's what I mean. But
the people we've all been listing off are none of the people that
we haven't talked about it, which I would believe. So I think he's being both cheeky and truthful. But the whole point is, what is what?
I mean, he went to all that trouble and he still didn't say Brainiac's not in the movie.
Right.
Oh, yeah. All he did was point out, just to be clear, I never said Brainiac was in the movie, but he didn't come out and say, guys, Brainiac's not in the movie.
Right.
By the way, somebody in the live chat, I think it was, I can't remember who it was. Somebody in the live chat just threw out the name John Malkovich for Brainiac.
I would see that.
I would see that. That's not a bad name for a Brainiac. I mean,
Yeah.
he couldn't be in Fantastic Four, make him Brainiac. They cut him out of Fantastic Four, which I get and I understand why they did, but that's interesting. Okay, so what about, when he says that none of the names that have been listed out there online, he goes, I've seen 6 or 7 names. We've all seen the names that they were throwing around. Obviously, at the head of that list was Matt Smith, who, by the way, is another name that I think would make a pretty good,
Oh, I think he'd make a great Brainiac.
depending on what version of Brainiac they were doing, that could be a very good one. But he says none of those names are people we've even talked about in the office. Because I agree with you, Rob. I think the moment James Gunn starts writing a character, I think he starts, like most people, he starts formulating who could play that role in his head. So I absolutely believe he's got people in mind. But it sounds like it's none of the people that we've already discussed. Do you think that pretty much means that we can scratch all those names off? Or do you think some of those names might still be in the running?
I think those names are a possibility for sure. And I think also, look, the problem is if actors, they have to downplay it, because if people think that there's only 3 names, and then their agents are like, well, we could hold them up for a lot of money. There's budgetary concerns. If you already float a name that's out there, they don't want to do that. They don't want to already say, we want him. Oh, you do? Well, it's going to cost you. That's not the way you negotiate. You don't negotiate like that. And I think that's a big deal, because this is not a small movie. Agents will love this. So he has to play down anybody that's in his mind. He's not going to say it. They're not going to talk about it until they know. I mean, that's the professional thing to do. So when they go to the agents, they can make a good deal. That's just good business.
All right, guys. Question is for you. James Gunn has just kind of dropped some things on us. Number 1, that Dave Bautista is not going to be Brainiac. Number 2, he just wants to remind everybody that he's never said anything about Brainiac being in the movie, although I think that is who's going to be in the movie. But the other thing is, and probably the most significant, is all those reports you saw flying around, James Gunn saying there's no truth to any of them. So we haven't even talked about those people, let alone auditioned them. I don't know. What do you take away from that? Do you have some names in mind about who could or could not maybe play a good Brainiac? Whatever you guys think, jump down into the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. All right, guys. With that down, it's time for us to do the most important part of our show, which is to go over and take your input, turn the show over to you guys and take your live comments and questions that you guys have been firing into our super chat. I'm just going to let you know, we've gotten a lot of questions come in, so I'm going to turn off the super chats in about 1 minute. So if you really have something you want to send it in now, because I'm going to turn off super chats in a minute. But before we get to your questions, 2 things we got to do. First is bid good afternoon to writer, director, producer Robert Meyer Burnett. Robert, great job as always, my friend. Have a
Great
good
to
day.
be here.
We'll talk to you again tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
And the second thing we need to do is we need to take a moment and thank a couple of sponsors of today's episode of the John Campea Show, our friends at PrizePicks and Aura. Guys, we want to thank the sponsor of today's episode, PrizePicks. Look, you and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right actually means you win. And with football back, there is no better time to get in on the action. You guys know I've been using PrizePicks for a while now, and it's honestly the most fun I've had engaging with the new football season already. For example, this weekend, I had Josh Allen throwing for more than 270 passing yards and Baker Mayfield having more than 2.5 passing touchdowns, and boom, I won on both. Building your lineups on PrizePicks is fast, simple, and honestly extremely fun. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player projections, and if you're right, you win. What's even better is that PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still win even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Plus, they've even got this thing called injury reboots, so if a player goes down in the first half, it won't count against you. And PrizePicks operates in more than 40 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So download the app today and use code CAMPEA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CAMPEA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Aura. Guys, if you are anything like me, you swear every year you're going to be on top of your Christmas shopping, and then suddenly it's December 20th, the shelves are empty, and you're standing around in Target asking yourself, does my aunt even like candles? But this year, I am not doing that because of Aura Frames. It's completely saved me. See, I always struggled with what to get people in my life, but this year I'm going to give out a couple of Aura Frames, and it's hands down the most personal, meaningful gift that I can possibly give. And here's the best part. Aura lets you upload unlimited photos and videos. Plus, the frame comes in a premium gift box with no price tag, so it feels like a classy, well thought out gift, even if you bought it last minute. Guys, you can't gift wrap togetherness, but you can frame it. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames named #1 by Wirecutter by using promo code CAMPEA at the checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code Campea. This deal is exclusive to our listeners and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in on time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning that we sent you at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. And thank you to our friends at PrizePicks and Aura for sponsoring today's episode of the John Campea Show. All right, guys, with that down, let's get over to the important stuff. Your live comments and questions. Jonathan, what we got up first?
First up, we hear from Benji Gator. Why do award shows, Oscars, Game Awards, give Best Director and Best Movie/Game? Aren't they redundant? How should voters distinguish the two
No,
awards?
they're not redundant at all. Like the job of the director, look, Best Movie, right? You're talking about the collective efforts of dozens and dozens and hundreds of people that all came, the work of the writers, and then the performances, and then the cinematography and the set direction, and the art design and the music, and then the direction of pulling all those things together. That's the totality of the one big thing. The director has a very specific job to do. And sometimes you can have a director who can take maybe not the best pieces and yet do most with those pieces than another director could have done, even if another movie ended up being better. Here's a great example. Here's an analogy for you. Sport. I know people go crazy when I make a sports analogy, but here it is. It's like saying, well, the team that won the championship, that's the coach. You should win Coach of the Year, right? Well, no, maybe the team that won the championship, maybe they had a good coach, but they also might have had a lot more going for it. They might have had a more established base. They might have had the better draft picks. They might have had the best mixture of veterans. They might have had the most talent. They might have had whatever, but you give Coach of the Year to the coach that did the very best job with whatever it is he had. So let's say a team last year had 0 wins, and then this year had 16 wins. Even if they didn't win the championship, they're likely to give that guy Coach of the Year. So the same is true. Like, while the director is absolutely the most important and prominent, which is why it's wild sometimes that, you know, a movie will get nominated for Best Picture, but the director not at least get a nomination for Best Director. But they are two separate awards. They're not synonymous because it is more than just the one director doing it. All right, what's next?
We got, first off, Guzman gives support.
Oh, thank you, Guzman.
And then TJ Perry says, can you record yourself and Anne's reactions playing the first 45 minutes of Expedition 33? Promise it'll be gold. Also, don't be too proud for easy mode.
No.
Did you get Expedition 33?
Oh no, what I said was, like, after the Game Awards,
Oh, yeah.
Ann and I did the same thing for It Takes Two.
Uh-huh.
Like, when It Takes Two won at the Game Awards, we were like, that looks good, let's get it. And as we were watching the Game Awards this year, because neither of us had played Expedition 33, and it won all the awards, we're like, well, I guess we're getting Expedition 33. But no, we will not be recording ourselves playing it. We're just going to play it.
All right.
All right, what's next?
We got X-Men Superfan. It was not long since I was asking about Rob Reiner's filmography. So sad to hear of his passing. The good he made remains.
You know, again, what is so crazy is when you actually sit back and look at the filmography, like, you forget. Like, nobody forgets that he did Princess Bride, but you forget that he did Misery. You forget that he did A Few Good Men. You forget that he did Ghosts of Mississippi. You forget that he did Stand By Me. His films are so diverse and so great. And again, like, some of the most iconic in the filmography forever. It's just really such a loss. All right, what's next?
We got Anthony says that Doomsday trailer leak. Who's chopping onions? Well,
I don't even know about the validity of it, to be honest with you. So I'm not even bothering to talk about it. All right, what's next?
$20 tip from Joe. or not tip, super chat.
Thank you, man.
John, I've been watching you since 2014. Today I turned 28. Wow, man. And I wanted to tell you how much of an impact you have made on my life. Thank you for all you've done for this community and my love of movies.
Oh, thank you so much for that, man.
So, so that's like 10, 11 years. So, wow. So since he was 17.
Yeah, I'm always amazed and overwhelmed. Like, first of all, when we're doing the movie meetups and stuff like that, I mean, just always grateful for everybody who's a part of our community and comes up. But I must admit, I'm particularly touched when I get these people who come up and say, "Hey, man, I've been watching you since high school, and we just had our second child," or "I've been watching you for 15 years," or "I've been watching you for 10 years." Like, just to know that we've had people who haven't just dropped in and enjoyed a couple, but like dropped in and been a ongoing part of the community for that long is mind-blowing to me. So thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time out to say kind words like that. Thank you, man. All right, what's next?
King Daddy Goat says over under 50% we ever get a It Chapter 3. Well, considering how It Chapter 2 ended, I don't think so.
I don't think we're not going to get. I don't think we're going to get Chapter 3. What we are going to get is more seasons of Welcome to Derry. And I think they're going to go progressively further back in time. I don't think that's a good philosophy, to be honest with you. But then again, I doubted Welcome to Derry to start with, so maybe it'll turn out great.
Yep.
All right, what's next?
X-Men Superfan says, I think Anne Hathaway and Charlize Theron will blow us away in the Odyssey. Do you think Zendaya, Elliot Page, and Robert Pattinson will bring it? I mean, why not? I hope so. Fingers crossed.
I mean, look, two things. One, these are actors under the direction of Christopher Nolan.
Right.
Two, these are all Oscar level actors. They're all Oscar level actors. So I have never not seen Robert Pattinson bring it. I have never not seen Zendaya bring it. I've never not seen Elliot Page bring it in whatever iteration of their career. So I have, and of course, as you mentioned, Anne Hathaway, an Academy Award winner, Charlize Theron, Academy Award winner. Yeah, they're all going to bring it, no doubt. And even if any of them show up and maybe don't have their best stuff, Christopher Nolan will get their best stuff out of them. So absolutely, they're all going to bring it, no doubt. All right, what's next?
Gavin Cagle says, John, I was originally only excited for for Avatar 3 to see the Doomsday trailer, but as the movie gets closer, I'm actually excited for the movie too.
You know, it's funny. I was talking to somebody last night about how, I'm not really feeling a super huge amount of hype and buzz for the new Avatar. And I said, well, I think you're right, but that's been the exact pattern of both Avatar movies so far. Neither the pattern for the Avatar movies is that they just do not open big. I mean, yeah, they open big, but they don't open biggest movies of all time big. You got to remember, Avatar, the biggest film in history, opened with $70-something million. Which isn't bad for a normal movie, but I mean, that's not what you think would go on to become the biggest film of all time. Avatar 2 had a decent opening, like 130 million or something like that. That's a decent opening, but it's not one that you think would join the top 3 highest grossing films of all time list.
Right.
So yeah, I said, I think you're right, but that's par for the course. Avatar 3 will have a good opening. 100 million, 110 million, 120 million, really good by most movie standards. And the real question will be, what does it have the legs that the other 2 Avatar movies had? So we'll see. But I am also getting more and more excited for it, I have to admit. By the way, should announce here that this Sunday, we are going to be having our Avatar open spoiler discussion. So of course the movie comes out Thursday night. You guys will have Thursday, Friday, and Saturday to watch it. And then Sunday, we're going to do our big Avatar open spoiler discussion. It's going to be fun because I'm going to be in the van. I'm going to be on my way to Canada.
Yeah.
But I'll be pulling off to do a couple of hours of open spoiler discussion for Avatar. So keep your guys' eyes open for that.
Cool.
All right, what's next?
We got Thanos says, demands your something cut off. What a world we live in. A beautiful, wonderful, yet utterly heartbreaking world. I didn't even watch this guy's work yet. His death broke my heart. Rest in peace. Well, I suggest you make a little project and just start going through his work, because you won't mind.
Again, I just, First of all, you've never seen Princess Bride? Dude, get on that and watch A Few Good Men. I'd suggest starting with Princess Bride and A Few Good Men and then work your way through all of it.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Gavin says, John, I like you, love the premise and first episode of Pluribus, but while the show was shot and acted phenomenally, it's just so damn slow, and I don't think I can make it to season, or I think he means episode 4 at this pace.
Man, this latest episode, and listen, we all have movies or TV shows that everybody loves and we don't, or everybody hates and we like, but like, I love particularly the first episode of Pluribus. Like, I love the premise of Pluribus is so good, and the performances and acting are so good, and the idea is so good. But I can't get over just how fucking slow the show is. And listen, I'm one of these people that I believe take the time to make sure you have your emotional impact of the experience, right? And sometimes that takes a little bit of time. But it's not that. I put up a social media post this week, Jonathan, that said, Pluribus is a masterclass in taking 45 minutes to do what easily and effectively could have been done in 10. And I'm not talking about making the TikTok version. No. I mean, but I'm watching this show. It's like, okay, they're trying to really convey this point in this 8-minute montage. But I, as the viewer, fully got the point in the first 90 seconds. You communicated the point. You communicated what was going on in the head and the heart of the character. And I got it now. It's registered with me now fully on an emotional level. Let's move on to the next scene. But instead, they just keep dragging that one scene out for another 7 minutes. I'll give you an example. The newest episode of Pluribus, at one point I had to pause the video to see the clock. Because when you pause the video, it shows you your timeline there.
Oh no, and you weren't far?
We were 17 minutes into the new episode. 17 minutes.
And you're already like, ah.
And all she had done was put gas in the car.
I've been there.
17 minutes into the episode. And it's literally cut of her driving, B-roll footage of her driving. Oh, stopping at a gas station. Oh, I need some gas. Go inside. Oh, I want a cold drink. Oh, but I don't want that cold drink. Oh, I'm going to get them to deliver me that drink. And then I'm going to tell them that the drink isn't cold enough. And then I put gas in. And I looked and I paused it and I looked at it. It's like, we're 17 minutes. We're 17 minutes. And all she's done is put gas in the car. Then fast forward, there's another scene where she's like on top of a building, doing like a driving, using the top of a building like a driving range.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand what they were trying to communicate for us to understand about Carol in those moments, but I got it.
Yeah.
They communicated it.
It seems like Scrubs did that better.
But instead of then moving on, no, we had to see her not hit 1 ball or 2 balls or 3 balls or 4. And they just kept repeating it. Oh, and she hit a ball and it broke another window. And it just dragged out. Then there's this other guy who's trying to make his way. I got what they were communicating. I fully understood it. The emotional resonance of it was communicated, but they dragged it. Literally, this episode, nothing happened. Girl puts gas in car. Guy gets picked up in helicopter. That's what happened in a 47-minute episode. Again, so I think the premise of the show is genius. I think the performances are really good. I love the idea of the show. But it's so insufferably slow that I tapped out. I officially tapped out. I can't watch it anymore. I watched this newest episode and I'm like, I can't do it. It's just, I just can't anymore. So I am unfortunately tapped out of Pluribus. But I know a lot of people love it. And if you are loving it, awesome. I'm not trying to dissuade you. I'm simply expressing why I am personally not loving it and I'm tapping out of it.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
Ryan says, I remember back in high school doing a project analyzing Stand By Me and Flipped.
Oh, wow.
R.I.P. Rob Reiner. Never saw Flipped, but I love Stand By Me.
I mean, Stand By Me was actually the movie of a generation,
Mm-hmm.
right? That for a long time, Stand By Me, when you said the phrase coming of age movie,
Yeah.
the first film that would come to most people's heads for a long period of time was Stand By Me. Stand By Me is the poster of a coming of age movie in many ways. And it's just crazy how many of those types of films that Reiner had. All right, what's next?
We got Oscar who says, got my YouTube Campea stats, #1 show, 16,000 minutes.
Wow.
I don't even think I've done 16,000 minutes. 0.1% of viewers. Rob got #2. Thank you both for keeping me company this year. Grateful for you all.
It was such a joy these last couple of weeks because both YouTube and Spotify sent out their badges and their stats to all their users. And how many people messaged me showing that the John Campea Show is the number. Actually, I'm going to see if I can bring this up. Spotify itself sent me this badge, and I'm going to see if I can find it here. That showed, and then YouTube sent me one as well. I'm almost there. I think I'm almost there. Maybe I'm not almost there. Oh no, there it is. Okay. So they sent me these two badges. One that said for the second year in a row, the video version of our show was in the top 1% of all video podcasts on Spotify. Top 1% of all video podcasts on Spotify. So thank you to everybody who watches us through Spotify. But this was the one that really shocked me. Was that we were the #1 most listened to podcast for 17,000 Spotify users. I had no idea that many people listen to us on Spotify. I had no idea. So thank you to Spotify for sending us these badges. But then, so a lot of people were sending me images, screenshots of their badges from YouTube and Spotify saying the John Campea was your #1 show and blah, blah. So thank you to everybody who did that. That was a real morale booster for me, to be honest. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate it a lot. All right, what's next?
Michael says, rest in peace, Rob Reiner. Just not just a legend, but a master of his craft who gave us one of the best films in nearly every genre: comedy, drama, fantasy, courtroom, and King adaptation. We'll miss his genius.
Yeah, that's the remarkable thing about him. You look at that list of movies, and it's like, this one was this type of movie, and this one was this wildly different kind of movie, and yet equally as iconic in all time. It was very, very few directors have that kind of a resume. I mean, there's Spielberg, who's the king of that.
Yeah.
But who else is on that list with Spielberg and Reiner? Not many. I'm sure there are a couple of others, but not many. All right, what's next?
X-Men Superfan says, let's not forget that Rob was a founder of the American Foundation for Equal Rights and fought for gay rights.
He like Rob mentioned earlier, he just loved people and tried to make the lives of people better. While some other people celebrate the lives of people who try to make other people's lives worse and harder, Rob Reiner tried to make people feel loved and valued and worthy and try to make their lives better. And I mean, listen, I primarily, admittedly, I think of him mostly as his work in film and as a filmmaker. But yeah, he did a lot of really cool things with his position as well. All right, what's next?
Benji Gator says, finally watched Thunderbolts. After high expectations, I was a bit underwhelmed, especially by the climax. Am I in the wrong? I still enjoyed it, though.
#1, there's no such thing as being in the wrong. I mean, like, movies are experiential events, and all those things hit us differently, right? You can hear a joke, and two people next to you might laugh, but it may not make you laugh. That doesn't mean they're right and you're wrong. You can ride a roller coaster. The person in front of you thought it was the worst roller coaster ever, but you thought it was one of the most exhilarating ones ever. Neither one of you are right or wrong. It's just, what experience did it create for you? And if you enjoyed the movie overall, that's all that matters. If it wasn't as good as you kind of was hoping it would be, well, that's the experience you had. There's just no wrong in that. That was your experience. Now, for me, my personal experience was much more positive. Like, I really had a wonderful time watching that movie. I've watched it like 4 times now. And it really resonates with me, but that doesn't mean it's going to do the same for you. And neither you or I are right or wrong about that. That's just our unique experiences with it. All right, what's next?
Mike says, with a €20 tip, super chat.
Oh, thank you, Mike.
I think I can count more Rob Reiner movies in my favorites than any other director. Stand By Me came along at a very difficult time in my teens and made me feel that I wasn't alone. It's very sad news.
See, that's one of the other great things that I don't think we kind of touched on, which is like every one of those movies really spoke to, I think, to experiences we had on some on a very practical level, some in an exaggerated way. Like the feelings that get experienced and the issues that are brought up, and even something like Misery, that's more anecdotal. And then something like Stand By Me, like you feel like, oh yeah, these types of experience I have growing up, I'm not alone in those. And I think a lot of his movies did that. And again, Rob was kind of mentioning this earlier, and I think he was absolutely spot on when he kind of hinted that Rob Reiner had a way of really communicating to us the human experience in different ways and in different forms, but he did really good at that. All right, what's next?
We got Ibsy with a 20-pound super chat.
Thank you, Ibsy.
First time super chatting from Manchester, UK.
Aw, thank you so much, man. Appreciate that.
I always think of the movie 24-Hour Party People when I think of Manchester. Longtime viewer of the show and best trio on YouTube. Can't believe I'm buying 4 Avatar tickets, but I guess many are doing the same. The Power of Doomsday, 2 billion guaranteed. Now, is that because you're going 4 different times, or you're just getting 4?
Well, he's talking about going to see Avatar 4 different times to see the 4 different trailers.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I will not be doing that.
But how do you know you're going to get? Like, what if there's repeats of the...
Well, no. What they've said is each new weekend, they're going to put the new version of the trailer in with Avatar,
Yeah, from
right?
different weekends, right.
Now, man, I don't know. Like, I'm going to be in theaters on Thursday night watching Avatar and watching this trailer. Will I buy a ticket to the following weekend just so I could see the next trailer first? I want to say no, but I'm kind of cave and do it anyway.
In a world of A-list where you can see...
what? Yeah, in a world of A-list, just get the ticket again, go in for 2 minutes, watch the trailers and leave, I suppose, get myself a popcorn and leave. Maybe. We'll see. I mean, so I don't know if I'll do that, but I'm saying I won't do that, but when push comes to shove, I very well may. Oh, no, we'll find out. Your experience is not going to be unique, I think. All right, what's next?
We got X-Men Superfan who says, and why did you think Shakespeare mixed comedy and tragedy in Romeo and Juliet? And why do film adaptations go just for the tragedy angle and forget the comedy of it? Well, Shakespeare was a master.
Well, I mean, Shakespeare was Shakespeare. There's that. But I don't think it's accurate to say that we haven't had films that have had elements of tragedy and elements of comedy at the same time.
Oftentimes, having the comedy and the levity, it draws out the tragedy,
and it creates bigger impact for the tragedy when that's there. An example of that would be, what's that Seth Rogen, Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie? Where Joseph Gordon-Levitt has cancer.
Oh gosh, I love that. 50-50?
50-50. Thank you. But there are many others like that too, right? So I don't think they're as rare as you might think. Anyway. All right, what's next?
Got Evelyn. Stephen Miller likely wrote it. Fool doesn't know words for like under yielding and affliction. Can't combine independent and dependent clauses. Too dumb. It's hard to say.
What are we talking about?
I think the tweet or the truth, quote unquote, if staff members wrote it, but either way, it was approved.
Regardless. Well, first of all, look, I have no doubt that he had a staff person write it without irony, without hyperbole, without sarcasm. Donald Trump's grasp of the English language is not that good. And I don't say that trying to be funny, but he has a 3rd grade vocabulary. He can't speak to a certain level. He just can't. He's incapable of it. So I have no doubt, but it was still under his guidance, and he's the one who's got to approve it and all that kind of stuff. So whether it came from an auto pen of sorts or a ghost writer of his, it's still him. It's his name on it. So anyway, there's that. All right, what's next?
Omar says John Cena is just
big water. It's got big water. Sorry. Anyway. What's next?
John Cena has just unfortunately retired from the WWE. Wanted to know if you have any favorite movie or performances from him. I mean, Peacemaker would be mine.
Obviously Peacemaker.
Yeah.
I mean, the movie to me, though, that made me go, he's actually got something. It was Amy Schumer's Trainwreck.
Trainwreck's a great movie.
I'm not a huge Amy Schumer fan, but that was a really good movie. That was a funny movie. I enjoyed that movie. But that was the one where I went like, you know what? Cena's got some natural comedic timing. Like, again, it wasn't an amazing comedic performance of his in Trainwreck, but I thought he's got some pretty natural giftings in this. And we've seen him really lean into that. Like, I remember he did that movie Blocked. That was short form for Cock Blocked, where he played the dad. And I remember going, no, he wasn't ready to be a lead. He was not ready to be a lead yet. And for that one, that's fine. But he's really developed and developed and developed. And then again, he in the hands of James. And listen, look what James Gunn has done with actors with, at the time, limited acting ability, like Dave Bautista, and James Gunn's ability to really bring out the best that they have and hide their weaknesses. He did it for Dave Bautista and he did it for John Cena. And John Cena's just really grown in that ever since. So, but yeah, while I got to say the real start for that was Trainwreck, clearly it's Peacemaker. I mean, that's his Ryan Reynolds playing Deadpool. That's his Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark. I'm not saying he's on that level, but I'm saying that's his version of it is his role as Peacemaker. All right, what's next?
A Marcella says, "Do I have face on my face?" Quoting Pennywise.
That was, "Do I have face on my face?" That was, there's some really good lines in that show, man. There's some really good lines in that show. All right, what's next?
Benji Gator saw my YouTube 2025 recap. Surprise! The John Campea Show is number one.
Thank you for that, man, and thanks for sharing that. Like I said, it's a huge morale boost. Thank you, man. All right, what's next?
X-Men super fan. Do you think Christopher Nolan has a little bit of a blind spot while writing female characters?
I don't think so. Like, okay, so I remember I was in another discussion about this topic maybe a year or two ago. When you look at characters like Anne Hathaway's in Interstellar, or what's another good one? Or like Inception, right? He's not bad at writing female characters, but he has not written like lead female characters. And I don't know if that's just hey, listen, I'm writing to my experience. And, you know, as a man and as a guy, that's really more my perspective. So I'm better at writing that. Now, when he does write female characters, they are always smaller and more supporting roles. But again, you look at, like, just go to Interstellar again, like McConaughey's daughter in it, right? Very well written, just a smaller role. So I think when he writes female characters, when he does have female characters in them, he does a pretty good job, except for maybe Rachel in the Batman movies. That I don't think that character was ever written particularly well.
No.
As great as those Batman movies are. But the one criticism could be said that he's never really had a female character front and center.
Yeah.
The lead. And maybe that's just a matter that's not his experience, that's not his forte. But I do think when he does write characters, granted in smaller roles, I think he's done a pretty good job with them. Anyway. All right, what's next?
Espinoza says, "Hey, John, have you and Ann had the chance to check out the first and 2 episodes of the Taylor Swift Eras Tour docuseries, The End of an Era on Disney Plus?"
No, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not interested in it, but I know Ann is. So I know Ann watching. But I will say, even though it's not my cup of tea, it's probably not what I'm going to watch. I've heard it's good. I've heard it's actually pretty good. So again, I have too many other things to watch. I'm probably not going to check it out, but I know Ann is, and but I don't think she's had a chance to start watching it yet. She's just been too obsessed playing Cyberpunk 2077 lately. All right, what's next?
We got EJ10 who says, "So Gaston from Beauty and the Beast is getting his own live action film. This is coming from The Wrap. This could be pretty interesting."
They have been talking about that forever.
Now, is that Luke? Who was the actor who played him?
Yeah, the guy from Fast and Furious, who's
Luke Evans.
Luke Evans. I love Luke Evans, by the way. I love Luke Evans. But I remember, I think we were in Collider still. So this is going back minimum 5 years. We were in Collider, I think still. And I believe the story came out, if I'm not mistaken, that they were looking at doing a Gaston and LeFou show. I'm almost positive.
Deadline is reporting this as of 2 hours ago.
Right. But
Yeah.
again, I'm just saying, I remember them talking about that forever ago. By the way, like I said, I love Luke Evans. Bring this up. Now,
Was this for Dracula Untold? What era was this?
no, it was a little bit after Dracula Untold. I can't remember what it was for, but we were hanging out, and let me just, if you guys indulge me for a second, let me tell you this quick story. I might have told the story before, I'm not sure. So, this was one of those days where like I just had dedicated time blocked off for just me and Luke Evans. So I brought along my own camera. I sometimes instead of a press junket, I would just get dedicated time with an actor or something like that. So I would bring my own camera person. Anne really likes Luke Evans. So I invited Anne, my wife, to come along and to be my camera person. So Anne is the one who shot this picture.
Yeah.
So we go into Luke's hotel room, and he's super nice, super friendly, super awesome. But remember, here's Anne, this beautiful woman dressed up really nice. So the assumption was she was the interviewer and I was the cameraman. So I said to him, no, I said, actually, Anne is the camera person today. And he said, well, this is the most beautiful camera person I have ever met in my life. To which I said, now you remember, Anne is right there. As he said, well, this is the most beautiful camera person I've ever seen. To which I said, well, Luke, you've got great taste because Anne is actually my wife. It took me a second to realize the dirty look Anne then gave me. To which, at the end of the interview, as Anne and I leave, the first words Anne says to me are, why must you ruin everything for me? I said, yep, I get it. Totally get it. And of course, she was saying it in fun. But, I mean, it's like, Luke Evans says, this is the most beautiful camera person. And I'm like, hey, she's married. I didn't say that. I said, oh, you got great taste, man. This is actually my wife. Why must you ruin everything for me? Anyway, all that to say that I remember them talking about doing this a long time ago. And I doubt now that it's still going to be with Luke Evans. Although, are they saying anything in the report about if it's going to be Luke Evans and Josh Gad? By the way, I thought Luke Evans and Josh Gad were, think what you will about the live action Beauty and the Beast movie. I thought Luke Evans and Josh Gad as Gaston and LeFou were great. I thought they were really good. So I don't know. I'm going to guess that
no directors attached. I guess we already know all that.
Yeah, I'm going to guess it's probably not the same cast. They're going to move on to something else. But I remember they were going to try to get this going years ago.
While plot details are vague for this version, sources say it will be a new and original version of the new.
Okay, so new actors. That's what I figured.
Yeah.
All right, what's next?
All right. Excuse me. Evelyn just follows up, says that wasn't me defending the POTUS. Oh, that was because of the Stephen Miller thing. And then Zach Pasta Sauce Walter says, what's more likely, the Oscars add one more nom per category from 5 to 6, or they add one more nom for Best Picture from 10 to 11?
Neither. I think, listen, I endorsed the move to go to 10 pictures for to be nominated for Best Picture. Now, of course, we know going into the Oscars, like 6 of them, we all know, like 6 every year have no chance to win. And that's fine. But when you, like, Hollywood today, a lot more movies come out today than they did 30 or 40 years ago. And so if you want to honor the same percentage of films with a Best Picture nomination, then I thought it was appropriate to expand the main category, Best Picture. But I don't think they will or should expand it any further. And I don't think they will or should expand the other categories anymore. I think 5 is it. Sometimes it's fewer than 5, but I really think that's it, because they always go on to make sure that, it means something, right? You start giving out 15 Best Supporting Actor nominations. Well, then getting a Best Supporting Actor nomination isn't nearly as special. So I don't think they'll increase either, to be honest, at least not for the next decade. All right, what's next?
Jacob says, John, you were the Yoda to the movie fans.
By the way, Jacob sent in like a $50 super chat. Jacob, thank you. That's incredibly generous, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you. John, you are the Yoda to the movie fans. Rob is the Gandalf the White. John V is the Qui-Gon Jinn. At best, I'm a reckless Obi-Wan. Thank you for all you do for us film fans.
Well, first of all, it's always amazing when somebody wants to write in and support the show with a chat or a tip or something and just want to use it to say something encouraging. So thank you so much. I don't know that I'm a very good Yoda. I don't know that Rob is a particularly good Qui-Gon.
No, I was Qui-Gon. He was Gandalf.
Oh, Gandalf the White. That's right. I think, I think Jonathan as Qui-Gon is probably the best fitting of all those. But again, kind words. Thank you so much. They mean a lot to me. And thank you for supporting us on that level, man.
We got EJ Tan says duck and cover kiddos. Is that from that Pennywise?
Also, duck and cover kiddos. That is also from Pennywise. Yeah. So, and it's used so perfectly. It's used so well in the show.
We got Dom says what if the Avengers Doomsday trailer in front of Avatar is just Chair Watch Part 2?
Yeah, no, they're not going to do
No
that.
way in hell.
No, because that would increase the runtime of Avatar from 3 hours to 7 hours, and they won't do that. All right, what's next?
We got Captain Dr. Hawkeye.
That's a great username, by the way.
Whoever the fiscally irresponsible producer who approved $400 million Indy 5 should be fired, never work again. No mystery. Greatest of all time. KK was the producer, not to mention studio head in charge of that film.
Well, again, listen, like you can cry about it all you want. You can whine and bitch and moan and complain. Kathleen Kennedy is, according to Steven Spielberg, who knows more about movies than you do or that I do, says she's the greatest producer of all time. And like her resume backs that up. I mean, it at least backs it up that she's in that conversation. I mean, I may or may not think she is the greatest producer of all time. I just have a radically different opinion of her as a studio head. All right. And what you're talking about is not her as the producer. You're talking about the studio head who approved a $400 million budget. The producer did not approve a $400 million budget. The studio head produced agreed to the $400 million budget. I have no problem understanding that two things can be true. Truth number one, Kathleen Kennedy, I'm sorry, but her resume is unmatched. She is she's a first ballot Hall of Famer. To me, she is to somebody like Steven Spielberg, she is the greatest producer ever in Hollywood.
Just look at her film slate. Forget Lucasfilm. Go back, educate yourself on her film slate.
Now, that is truth number one. Truth number two is being a producer is not the same thing as being a studio head. Mm-hmm. And just because you're great at one does not mean you'll be great at the other. Wayne Gretzky is the greatest professional athlete that's ever lived. He wasn't a very good coach. They're both true. She has been, in my personal estimation, a horrible studio head. Terrible studio head. And that's why I've been saying for over 5 years, she should not be the head of Lucasfilm. Now, I was all for it at first because on paper it looked good and George Lucas handpicked her himself. So on paper, I was all for it at first, but it became apparent very quickly that this was not the right role for her. She is one of the greatest of all time in one thing, but she's terrible in another. Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, not a very good team owner in the NBA, according to most people who understand that stuff. So again, don't confuse Kathleen Kennedy, the producer, from Kathleen Kennedy, the studio head. All right, what's next?
Rennie says, this is our last of the super chats. Rennie says, the Batman or the Dark Knight, which one and why?
The Dark Knight. Yeah, listen, the Batman is wonderful. I couldn't believe what a great job Matt Reeves did with that movie. He made it very different and very unique from any other iteration of Batman that we've had. Overall, in the grand scope of filmmaking overall, the Dark Knight was just, I remember when it first came out, a lot of critics were stunned because they're saying it's not just a great comic book film. It's not just a great superhero film. This is a great gangster film. Mm-hmm. This is a great crime film. This is a great movie. And while I think the Batman, Matt Reeves is the Batman, is also great, it's no shade on it to say it's not one of the great movies of the genre of all time. Like, because listen, to many, many, many film fans, The Dark Knight is still the greatest comic book movie ever made. I don't agree. It is in my top 3. And so there is that. So yeah, I love the Batman. Can't wait for the Batman 2. But if I have to pick one between the Batman and the Dark Knight, I'll take the Dark Knight. But remember this.
Mm-hmm.
The Dark Knight was the second movie.
Right.
The Batman. Ask me if I prefer Batman Begins or the Batman.
Yeah.
I actually will take the Batman.
Me too.
And I love Batman Begins. I love Batman Begins. But if we're going to talk about the first film in the series, I'll take the Batman over Batman Begins. And again, that movie's great. I love it. But I won't say it's on the same level as The Dark Knight, but let's see how the Batman 2 goes. And all right, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for being here and making our little show part of your day. Big special thank you to all you guys who sent in those questions. Number 1, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number 2, you supported this channel as you did it. And all of us involved with the show, thank you guys so very much for your support. Big special thank you, of course, to Robert Meyer Burnett, to our technical producer, Jonathan Voico.
See you guys later.
My name's John Campea. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. Don't forget to come back and join us again tomorrow. But until then, my friends, bye-bye.